Hey everyone. So we're going to tackle a huge question today, one that's on pretty much everyone's mind. Why is it so incredibly hard to afford a home right now? For so many of us, that dream just feels like it's slipping away. But, Washington has a plan, or actually a few plans. So let's dive in and see what they're proposing, and ask the big question. Is it actually going to be enough to solve this crisis?
And this right here says it all. You hear this sentiment everywhere, don't you? It's the kind of thing people say at the dinner table or when they're standing in line at the grocery store. It just perfectly captures that frustration so many of us are feeling when we look at housing prices. This isn't just a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet. It's what people are living through every single day.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into the problem itself, what we're calling an unaffordable dream. Then, we'll look at the three big ideas coming out of Washington, their plans to build more, a push to rethink what a home even is, and how they plan on opening up the money taps. And finally, we'll get into the really tricky part, the unseen price tags that complicate this whole picture.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, an unaffordable dream. This is really the foundation for our whole conversation, that widespread financial squeeze that has put homeownership just out of reach for millions of people. Over the last few years, inflation has just hammered everyone's wallet. The cost of everything, groceries, gas, you name it, it's all gone up. And when you're just trying to make it from one paycheck to the next, the idea of saving up this giant pile of cash for a down payment, it can feel like a total fantasy. It's like the goalposts just keep getting moved further and further down the field. So, what's Washington's answer to all this? Well, that brings us to our second section. Their first big strategy is a pretty direct attack on the housing shortage. The basic idea is simple, right? If there aren't enough homes to go around, the government needs to find a way to get more of them built, and fast. What's really interesting here is how the federal government is trying to nudge local policy. They can't just order cities to build more. So instead, they're using federal money as a carrot, basically rewarding cities that get more housing built. They're also putting together a sort of playbook of best practices for zoning and trying to speed up those super long environmental reviews that can bog down projects for years. And this is a perfect example of what one of those best practices looks like in the real world. Instead of just building homes anywhere and everywhere, the guidance is pushing for denser housing near things like train stations and bus hubs. It's actually pretty clever, because it's not just tackling the housing shortage, it's also hitting on transportation and environmental issues at the exact same time. All right, let's move on to our third section. See, this part of the plan isn't just about building more homes. It's about building a totally different kind of home. It's about getting us to fundamentally rethink what an American home can even look like.
So what are we actually talking about here? Manufactured and modular homes. The best way to think about it is like this. It's the difference between building a car on an efficient assembly line versus trying to build one piece by piece in your driveway. The whole argument is that building a house in a controlled factory setting is just way more efficient, which could lead to some pretty big savings in both time and money.
Okay, so the big question is, how do you make these homes a real mainstream option? Well, lawmakers are targeting a couple of key rules. First, they want to get rid of the permanent chassis requirement. That's basically a metal frame that the house is built on, but it's not really needed once the house is in place. And second, they want to make these homes easier to get loans for by raising the loan limits, which would put them on more equal footing with traditional houses.
Okay, let's jump to Section 4. Because even if we have more houses, and even new kinds of houses, people still have to be able to actually pay for them. And this is where that third piece of the puzzle comes in, making the money itself easier to get.
A really big focus here is on something called small dollar mortgages. We're talking about loans under $150,000. Now, I know in today's market that might not sound like a lot, but these kinds of loans are absolutely vital for helping first-time buyers and people with lower incomes get their foot in the door, especially in more affordable parts of the country. And there are some other financial tools being kicked around too. First, there's a pilot program designed to help families who get rental assistance to build up some savings for a down payment. The second idea is much bigger. A huge proposal to have government-backed companies buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds. So how does that help you? Well, the theory is that by buying up all these bonds, the government creates more demand, which then pushes down the mortgage rates that banks offer to everybody.
So all these solutions, they sound pretty good, right? More houses, new kinds of houses, cheaper loans. But this question right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the problem. Is the price of the house the only thing that really matters? And that brings us to our final section, the unseen price tags. This is where all those neat and tidy policy ideas run smack into the messy reality of economics. Let's talk about the costs that don't always make it into the headlines.
Okay, the big one right off the bat, land. A factory-built home is a fantastic idea, but you've got to put it somewhere. And that means you either have to buy a plot of land, which can be ridiculously expensive, or you have to lease a spot in a manufactured home community, which of course comes with its own monthly fees.
And next up, you've got logistics. I mean, the house gets built in a factory, but then you have to get it from that factory to your plot of land, sometimes over really long distances. Then you need cranes and a whole crew to actually install it on site. All these delivery and setup fees are a pretty big expense, and they're definitely not included in the sticker price of the house itself.
And this is a really crucial financial difference. A traditional home usually goes up in value because the land it sits on is valuable. But manufactured homes can sometimes lose value. They can depreciate, kind of like a car. And that risk is a lot higher if the home is on land you're just leasing, because you aren't building any equity in the most valuable part of the whole deal, the ground underneath it.
So this is where we land. Washington is pulling all these different levers. They're working on supply, on new housing types, on financing. But can these top-down policies really fix an affordability crisis when the reality on the ground involves the high cost of land, expensive delivery fees, and the risk of depreciation? It's really the central question we're left with, and the answer is going to shape the future of American homeownership for all of us.